The upscale restaurant hummed with the soft clatter of silverware and murmured conversations, a symphony of normalcy that made Elena's difference feel like a spotlight. She sat across from Marcus, her mother's colleague's son, arranged through a web of well-meaning pity, and felt a familiar weight of being seen without being understood. Her fingers traced the embossed menu, reading Braille with practiced ease, while Marcus cleared his throat for the third time in as many minutes. "So," he began, his voice carrying that particular brightness people use when they thought kindness meant volume. "Do you need help ordering?" Elena suppressed a smile that would have been sharp enough to cut. "I've been feeding myself for 24 years. I think I can manage." The silence that followed tasted of discomfort. She'd learned to read silences the way others read faces. This one was thick with Marcus's regret, his wish to be anywhere else, his growing certainty that this evening was a charitable obligation he hadn't signed up for. The pity rolled off him in waves she could almost touch, and something inside her chest constricted. Not hurt, exactly. She'd stopped letting that particular wound bleed years ago. Just exhaustion at having to be grateful for crumbs of human connection. "Look, Elena," Marcus said, and there was a shift, the moment when politeness gave way to escape. "I'm going to be honest with you. My mom really pushed for this, but I don't think you seem nice, but I'm just not interested in dating someone broken." The words left her mouth before she could stop them, sharper than she'd intended. "It's fine, Marcus. You can go." "I wouldn't say broken." "Then what would you say?" She leaned forward slightly, and she knew her eyes, pale blue, unfocused, the visible mark of her blindness, were directed somewhere near his face. She'd learned to aim by sound. "That you're not attracted to me? That you can't imagine introducing your friends to someone who can't see them? That you're worried about what people would think?" The scrape of his chair answered before his words could. "I'm sorry. This was a mistake." His footsteps retreated, quick and guilty, and Elena sat in the wake of his departure with her hands folded on the table, willing herself not to feel the familiar sting. The restaurant continued around her, conversations flowing like water around stone, and she was alone again, always alone in crowds. "Excuse me." The voice came from her right, from a direction of what she'd assumed was an empty table, based on a lack of conversation or movement she tracked when she arrived. It was a voice unlike any she'd heard before, deep as midnight, smooth as aged whiskey, with an accent she couldn't quite place. Old world, perhaps, European, but more than that, it carried weight, the kind of authority that made people stop mid-sentence and listen. Elena turned her head toward the speaker. "Yes, forgive the intrusion, but I couldn't help overhearing." A pause, and then, "You deserve better." The words hung in the air between them, simple and devastating. Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks, embarrassment at being overheard, anger at being pitted again, and something else she couldn't name. "I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm not offering pity." The voice moved closer, and she heard the whisper of expensive fabric, caught the scent of something dark and complex, cedar and smoke, and something ancient, like old books in forgotten libraries. "I'm stating fact. That man was a coward, and you wasted words on him he didn't deserve to hear." Elena's breath caught. There was something mesmerizing about the way he spoke, each word chosen with precision, delivered with absolute certainty. "You don't know anything about me." "I know enough." Footsteps, deliberate and unhurried. He was standing beside her table now. "I know you're sitting here alone, pretending that his departure didn't wound you, when you have every right to be furious. I know you've spent your life making yourself smaller to make others comfortable. And I know that the trembling in your hands isn't from sadness, it's from holding back rage." Elena's fingers stilled on the tablecloth. He was right. All of it. The fury simmering beneath her practiced calm was a living thing, and somehow this stranger had seen it. No, heard it, felt it, when even she had been trying to deny its existence. "Who are you?" Someone who recognizes wasted potential when he sees it. A pause. "May I join you?" Every instinct screamed that this was dangerous. Strange men didn't approach women in restaurants and say things that cut straight to the bone. Strange men didn't sound like fallen angels offering both salvation and damnation in the same breath. But Elena had spent her entire life being careful, being safe, being good, and it had earned her nothing but rejection after rejection. Yes, she heard herself say. The chair Marcus had vacated scraped against the floor, and the stranger sailed across from her with a presence that seemed to alter the very air. Elena had learned to sense people through the small disturbances they created, the warmth of bodies, the displacement of space, the subtle shifts in sound. This man was different. He was cold where others were warm, still where others fidgeted, and the space around him felt heavier, as though gravity worked differently in his vicinity. "I'm Elena," she offered, uncertain why she felt compelled to give her name to someone who had essentially materialized from nowhere. Adrian. The way he said it felt like a gift and a secret simultaneously. "Tell me, Elena, what brought you to this restaurant tonight?" She could have lied. Should have, perhaps. But something about Adrian's presence stripped away the usual defenses. Desperation disguised as hope. "My mother arranged it. She worries that you'll be alone. That I'll die alone specifically." Elena surprised herself with the honesty, as if being blind makes me less capable of finding love, or deserving of it. "And what do you think?" The question was simple, but the way he asked it, with genuine curiosity rather than clinical interest or morbid fascination, made her pause. What did she think? Not what her mother thought, or what Marcus thought, or what the endless parade of pity dates thought. What did Elena herself believe about her worth, her future, her capacity to be loved? "I think," she said slowly, "that everyone looks at me and sees what I can't do, what I can't see. They measure me by absence rather than presence. Then they're fools." Adrian's voice carried absolute conviction. "Tell me what you can do. Elena, what do you perceive that others miss?" She opened her mouth to deflect, to offer some modest accounting of her life. Her job transcribing legal documents, her ability to navigate the world through memory and sound. But something stopped her. The question wasn't rhetorical. He actually wanted to know. "I hear things," she began, and then, emboldened by his stillness, continued. "Not just sounds. Truths. When people speak, I can hear the architecture of their lies. The false notes. The places where words don't match intention. I hear fear and laughter, loneliness in crowds, love in silence. I hear what people are too afraid to say." The silence that followed was different from Marcus's discomfort. This was a tension, pure and focused as a blade. "Remarkable," Adrian said softly, "and terrifying, I imagine, to live in a world where you can never unhear the truth." Elena's throat tightened. No one had ever understood that. The burden of her gift, the exhaustion of knowing too much. "Yes. What do you hear when I speak, Elena?" The question was a test, perhaps, or an invitation. She tilted her head, listening not just to his words, but to everything beneath them. His voice was controlled, each syllable measured, but underneath ran something vast and old, loneliness that stretched back centuries, hunger that had nothing to do with food, and, surprisingly, a current of genuine interest, as though she were a puzzle he hadn't expected to find fascinating. "Isolation," she said finally, "and truth. You mean what you say, which is so rare it sounds like a foreign language." She paused and added, "And something else. Something I don't have words for. You're not like other people." "No," Adrian agreed, and she heard the slight smile in his voice. "I'm not." The waiter approached then, his footsteps nervous. Elena had learned to read the service industry's discomfort. They never knew how to address her, where to look, whether to speak directly to her or to whoever accompanied her. But the waiter's anxiety now had a different flavor. "Fear. Can I get you anything, sir?" The words were directed at Adrian, barely above a whisper. "We'll both have the filet mignon rare, and bring us your best wine." Adrian's tone brooked no argument, though it wasn't unkind. Simply absolute. The waiter fled. "I didn't order yet," Elena pointed out, though without heat. "You were going to order the salmon. Something safe, modest, easy to eat without making a mess." Adrian's voice held amusement. "Tonight, you're going to have exactly what you want, not what's convenient for others to watch you consume. And if you make a mess, you'll do so without shame." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. He was right again. She'd been planning to order exactly that, the same dish she always ordered when dining with others, chosen not for taste but for the minimal risk of embarrassment. How did you? Because I've watched countless people make themselves invisible to survive. You perfected it to an art form. The scrape of fabric suggested he leaned forward. But you don't have to disappear with me. Elena, I prefer people who exist in full color. Why? The word escaped before she could stop it. Why do you care? Because you interest me. Simple. Direct. True. She heard no ulterior motive in the words, no hidden agenda, just honest fascination. Because you have a gift that could change the world if anyone had the courage to truly see you. And because... He paused, and for the first time, she heard something uncertain in his voice. Because I am very tired of pretending to be less than I am, and I recognize that exhaustion in you. The wine arrived, poured with trembling hands. Elena waited until the waiter retreated before speaking again. What are you pretending to be? Human. The word dropped like a stone into still water. And before you dismiss this as metaphor, I mean it literally. I am not human. Elena, I am something much older and infinitely more dangerous. She should have laughed, should have stood and left, marking this down as yet another cruel joke at the blind girl's expense. But she heard no deception in his voice, and more than that, she felt the truth of it in the cold space he occupied, in the fear he inspired in others, in the ancient weight of his presence. Were you? Her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. A vampire. He said it as easily as someone might say accountant or teacher. Though that word carries so much mythology, it's almost meaningless. I am very old, very powerful, and very interested in having dinner with you tonight. Elena, if you're willing. Her hands trembled around the wine glass. Every survival instinct she possessed screamed at her to leave, to run, to call for help. But underneath the fear ran something else, a wild, reckless hope. Because if he was telling the truth, if he was something beyond human, then maybe she wasn't the only person in the world who lived outside normal boundaries. Maybe she wasn't alone in her difference. If you wanted to hurt me, she said slowly, working to the logic, you would have done it already. You wouldn't have announced yourself. So either you're telling the truth and you want something else, or you're lying and you're just cruel. I hear no lie in your voice, she continued, her gift confirming what her instinct suspected, which means you're actually claiming to be a vampire, which is impossible. Except, she laughed, a sound edge with hysteria, except I can hear the truth of it. Somehow, you believe it absolutely, and I can't detect any delusion, because there is none. Adrian's voice held approval. You have remarkable composure. Elena, most humans respond poorly to this revelation. Most humans didn't spend their whole lives being told their perception was wrong. She lifted the wine glass to her lips, surprised to find her hands had steadied. If vampires are real, it actually makes the world make more sense. At least I'm not the only impossible thing in it. The laugh that escaped Adrian was rich and genuine. Surprise from him. You are extraordinary. Do you know that? I know I'm tired of being ordinary. Elena set down her glass with deliberate care. So here's my question, Adrian. Why tell me? Why reveal yourself to someone you just met? Because you can't see me, he said simply. You can't look at me and see the monster. You can only hear the truth. And the truth is that I am both monster and man, dangerous and desperately lonely. You hear past the surface to what lies beneath, which means you're one of the few people in centuries I can be honest with. A pause. And because you deserve better than that coward's rejection, and I wanted you to know that your gift has value beyond measure, to the right person. The food arrived, carried by a different waiter who set the plates down hastily and vanished. The scent of perfectly cooked meat and herbs filled Elena's nose, rich and complex. She picked up her knife and fork, mapping the plate's geography by touch and memory. This is insane, she murmured. Yes, Adrian agreed. Will you stay anyway? Elena cut into her steak, felt the juice run across the plate, and made her choice. She'd spent her entire life being careful, being safe, being the person others needed her to be. Tonight, in this moment, she was going to be reckless. Tonight, She was going to trust the impossible. Yes, she said, and took her first bite of something chosen for pleasure rather than convenience. Tell me everything. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Adrian's silence lasted long enough that Elena wondered if she'd made a mistake. Then he spoke, his voice carrying something that might have been relief, might have been satisfaction, might have been both. Everything is a dangerous request, he said. I've lived for 9 centuries. Where would you like me to begin? Elena swallowed her bite of steak. Perfectly cooked, butter-soft, nothing like the safe salmon she always ordered and considered. 9 centuries. The number was incomprehensible, a span of time that stretched back before her country existed, before the modern world had taken shape. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt a strange thrill running through her veins, electric and alive. Begin with tonight, she said. Why were you here? In this restaurant, at that table, at exactly the moment I needed someone to tell me I wasn't worthless. Coincidence, Adrian said, then amended. No, that's not quite true. I come here sometimes because the food is excellent, and the atmosphere reminds me of places I used to frequent when the world was younger. But why tonight, specifically? I don't know. Fate, perhaps. Or simply luck. Yours or mine. I haven't decided yet. Elena heard the honesty in his words, but also the evasion. You're used to controlling information, choosing what to reveal and when. 9 centuries of survival requires careful curation of truth. His tone held approval again, as though she'd passed another test. You hear that, don't you? The places where I shape my words. Always. She took another bite, letting the flavors bloom across her tongue. It's exhausting, if you want to know the truth. Everyone lies. About everything. Small lies, mostly. I'm fine, you look great. I'd love to help. But they accumulate. Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning in the static of other people's falsehoods. Static, Adrian repeated, turning the word over. That's exactly what it must sound like. White noise of deception. A pause. I don't lie, Elena. Not anymore. I spent the first few centuries of my existence crafting elaborate deceptions, playing power games with other mortals, manipulating humans for sport or survival. It was necessary, or so I told myself. But somewhere around the 3rd or 4th century, I realized that lying had become so habitual I'd forgotten how to be honest, even with myself. So I stopped. Elena set down her fork, attention fully focused on him now. Just like that, you stopped lying. Not easily. It took decades to unlearn the habit. And I still withhold information. That's not the same as lying, merely being selective. But I don't speak untruths. It's a personal code, one I've maintained for 500 years. His voice softened. Which means when I tell you that you deserve better, when I say you're extraordinary, when I claim that your gift has value beyond measure, I mean every word. Heat flooded Elena's face, spreading down her neck. Compliments always felt suspect, colored by pity or ulterior motive. But Adrian's words rang with truth, each one solid and real in a way that made her chest ache. He meant it. He actually meant it. I don't know what to say, she admitted. Then say nothing. Eat your dinner. Let me tell you about the world you can't see, and you tell me about the truths you hear that I might miss. So she did. They fell into conversation as easily as old friends, though they'd met less than an hour ago. Adrian described the restaurant around them, the glittering chandeliers throwing prismatic light across white tablecloths, the couples leaning close in intimate conversation, the businessman in the corner checking his phone compulsively while his wife stared out the window with desperate eyes. He painted pictures with words, not for her benefit as a blind woman, but as though describing art to a fellow collector, and Elena told him what she heard. The businessman's wife crying silently, tears she was too proud to acknowledge. The elderly couple 3 tables over who held hands and said nothing, their silence full of 50 years of shared life and comfortable peace. The sommelier who hated his job but needed the money, performing enthusiasm like a trained actor. You hear all that? Adrian asked, fascination evident in his voice. I hear everything. Elena pushed her empty plate away. Surprised she finished it all. She hadn't made a mess, but even if she had, she realized she wouldn't have cared. Not here. Not with him. It's not just sound. It's vibration, intention. I don't have words for it. But yes, I hear truths that people don't speak aloud. Show me. The challenge was gentle but unmistakable. Elena tilted her head, listening past Adrian's words to what lay beneath. It was harder with him than with others. His control was remarkable, 9 centuries of practice making his emotional resonance subtle as shadow. But it was there she focused. Loneliness. Yes, that vast ocean of isolation she'd sensed before. Curiosity, sharp and hungry. Interest in her that went beyond mere novelty. And underneath it all, something wounded. Some ancient hurt that had never quite healed. You've been betrayed, she said quietly. Someone you trusted, someone you loved, turned that trust into a weapon. And it happened so long ago that most people would have forgotten it by now. But you can't. It shaped you, made you cautious. Made you, she stopped, uncertain if she should continue. Made me what? Adrian's voice had gone very soft, very still. Afraid to hope, Elena finished. You expect disappointment now. Build it into your calculations. But you still want connection badly enough that you sit in a restaurant alone, watching humans live their small lives, wondering if you'll ever find someone who can see past what you are to who you are. The silence that followed was profound. Elena's heart hammered. She'd gone too far, seen too much, violated some unspoken boundary. She opened her mouth to apologize, but Adrian spoke first. I have not been understood like that in 800 years, he said, and his voice carried something raw and unguarded. Not since. He stopped, started again. Her name was Catherine. She was human, brilliant, beautiful, and absolutely fearless. I revealed myself to her as I did to you tonight, and she accepted me without hesitation. We had 43 years together before age took her from me, and in those years, she knew me better than anyone before or since. Elena's throat constricted. I'm sorry. Don't be. Those years were worth the grief that followed. But after she died, I told myself I would never risk that kind of connection again. Loving humans is agony. You bloom and fade so quickly, and we are left with centuries to carry the weight of your absence. He paused. I've been alone by choice for a very long time. Elena, surrounded by people but connected to none of them. Until tonight. Until tonight, he agreed. When a blind woman with the most remarkable gift I've ever encountered sat alone after being rejected by a fool, and I found myself compelled to speak to her, to be seen by someone who cannot see. The waiter appeared again, clearing plates with hands that shook slightly. Elena heard his elevated pulse, smelled the fierce sweat on him. He was terrified of Adrian, though trying desperately to hide it. When he asked about dessert, his voice cracked. We'll have the chocolate soufflé, Adrian said. 2 spoons. After the waiter fled, Elena leaned forward. He's afraid of you. Why? Because humans have instincts, even when they don't understand them. I'm a predator. Their bodies recognize that fact even when their minds dismiss it as impossible. Adrian's tone was matter-of-fact, neither proud nor ashamed. I haven't fed from a human in 3 centuries. I have other means of sustaining myself. But the predator remains, and some part of them will always know it. I'm not afraid of you. Elena was surprised to realize it was true. She should have been terrified. He'd admitted to being a vampire, a predator, something that had hunted humans for centuries. But sitting across from him, hearing the truth in every word he spoke, she felt safer than she had in years. Why? Because you don't rely on instinct alone. You rely on truth. And the truth is that I have no intention of harming you. Quite the opposite. He paused, and she heard something shift in his voice, a decision being made. Elena, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to understand that you're free to refuse without consequence. Will you let me walk you home tonight? The question hung in the air between them, weighted with implications. This was more than simple courtesy. This was Adrian asking permission to extend their acquaintance beyond this meal, to know where she lived, to enter her life in a way that couldn't be easily undone. Yes, Elena said, and felt the word change something fundamental in the space between them. The soufflé arrived, rich with dark chocolate and some essence Elena couldn't name, vanilla maybe, or something more exotic. They ate in companionable silence, and Elena marveled at how comfortable she felt. No anxiety about making a mess, no self-consciousness about being watched, no exhausting performance of normalcy. Just existence, simple and uncomplicated. When the meal ended, Adrian settled the bill with quiet efficiency. Elena heard the shuffle of cash, a large amount, based on the waiter's sharp intake of breath and stammered thanks. Then Adrian was standing beside her chair, close enough that she felt the cold emanating from him, that strange absence of heat that marked him as other. "May I?" he asked, and Elena understood he was offering his arm. She stood, gripping her white cane in one hand and accepting his arm with the other. The cold of his skin seeped through the expensive fabric of his sleeve, but it wasn't unpleasant, just different. They moved through the restaurant together, and Elena was hyper-aware of how people's conversations stuttered as they passed, how the ambient noise of the room seemed to part around Adrian like a wave around stone. Outside, the autumn air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and distant rain. Elena breathed deeply, centering herself. The evening had taken on a surreal quality. Had she really spent the last 2 hours having dinner with a vampire? Discussing truth and loneliness and betrayal with someone who'd been alive for 9 centuries? "Where do you live?" Adrian asked as they started walking, his pace adjusted perfectly to hers. 10 blocks north. I usually take a car, but I like walking when the weather's nice. Elena navigated by memory and sound, counting steps, tracking the subtle shifts in echo that told her when they passed building corners or approached intersections. It's a small apartment. Nothing special. I doubt that. Anything touched by you would be remarkable by definition. Elena stumbled slightly, not from physical imbalance, but from the casual way he delivered the compliment, as though it were simple observable fact rather than flattery. Adrian's hand steadied her immediately, his grip gentle but absolutely secure. "You have to stop saying things like that." Elena managed. "Why?" "Because I don't know how to process them. Because I spent my entire life being told I'm brave for existing, special for managing basic tasks, inspiring for not giving up. Your compliments are different. They feel real, and I don't know what to do with real." Adrian was quiet for half a block before responding. "Then learn. Because I mean every word, and I'm not going to stop acknowledging your worth simply because others have taught you to doubt it." They walked in silence after that, but it was comfortable rather than awkward. Elena found herself hyper-aware of Adrian's presence beside her, the cold aura he carried, the deliberate precision of his movements, the way his attention seemed to track everything around him simultaneously. He was scanning for threats, she realized, protecting her without making a show of it. "Tell me about your life," Adrian said eventually. "Not what you do for work or where you went to school. Tell me what matters to you, what keeps you awake at night, what you dream about when you let yourself dream." The question was more intimate than it had any right to be, cutting past small talk straight to the bone. Elena should have deflected, should have given some safe, curated answer. Instead, she told him the truth. "I dream about being chosen," she said quietly. "Not out of pity or obligation or charity, but because someone looked at me, really saw me, and decided I was exactly what they wanted. Not despite my blindness, but including it. All of me, not just the palatable parts." She laughed, the sound brittle. "Pathetic, right? The blind girl dreams of being seen." "Not pathetic. Human." Adrian's voice was gentle. "And for what it's worth, I chose to speak to you tonight for exactly that reason. Because I saw, heard, perceived, whatever term you prefer, all of you. The anger and courage and exhaustion, an extraordinary gift. And I wanted more of it. More of you." Elena's breath caught. They'd stopped walking. She realized, we're standing on a corner while the city moved around them. She turned toward Adrian, aware that her unseeing eyes weren't quite meeting his, but not caring anymore.